Hey everyone, welcome to Rock Bottom Syndicate. I'm your host, Joyce Strong. Rock Bottom Syndicate is about people who have a story to tell to inspire others to keep working toward their potential no matter what happens. Rock Bottom is an opportunity to learn, pivot, and adapt to whatever life throws your way. Rock Bottom's a time when you can choose to take responsibility for everything in your life, because it's when you do take responsibility that you gain the control you need to change things for yourself, and there's nothing more powerful. Your secret to the prison of your emotions and telling your story will set you free to heal and be yourself, and to then go on to create a strong, joyous life. So I encourage you to ask for help and tell your story. My guest today is Annemarie Tolman. She's a registered nurse, has a master's degree in nursing, and a beautiful story to tell about how she ended up getting into her practice of coaching and helping people with her 3-brain solution. Her story today on Rock Bottom is about her losing Daniel, her fourth of 5 children. And Daniel died at 4 days old. Annemarie tells you about the trauma she experienced leading up to that, how it felt to her in those first 4 days with Daniel, and how it's actually been a blessing for her and opened up a world to her where she can celebrate and honor Daniel and help so many people and herself. So really brought out things in her she didn't know she had. So it's a bit of a sad story, but it's a beautiful story. So help me celebrate Daniel and Annemarie Tolman. And reach out to Annemarie at AnnemarietTolman.com. Enjoy our show. Hi, Annemarie. So nice to have you today.
It's nice to be here. I'm so glad you got me on this call. It's wonderful. This program.
Yes. I'm always so inspired listening to people's stories, and in Rock Bottom Syndicate, it's really about being inspired, even though sometimes they're really delicate subjects that we deal with. And I just want to make sure people know, first of all, how to reach you, because I might forget by the time I hear your story towards the end, and I want to make room for that. So it's AnnemarietTolman.com, and that's all one word, Annemarie, ANNEMARIE TOLMAN, 1 L. Also, same name under LinkedIn or Facebook, Instagram.
Yep. You can find me all there.
Yeah, awesome. So that's how you'll reach. And maybe start a little bit with what you do now, who you are. As you know, I know that you're an RN, have a master's degree, but why don't you tell a little bit about yourself to start?
Sure. I'd love to. And I'm so glad to be here, like I said. So, yeah, I'm a nurse. I'm also a coach. And so for many years, years ago, I got my master's at Hopkins and was educated in the Netherlands, originally, if you hear a little bit of a tongue, and did that for many years, loved it, and then really got into coaching and healing and started my own business called BrainSolutions. And that's what I'm doing right now. I'm helping clients with their 3 brains, their mind, their heart, and their gut. So that's just a really snippet of who I am and what I do nowadays.
And we're going to interview you on my other podcast, Totally Well, and so people will hear more about the 3-brain solution. So we'll get into that. But the way you got here is so interesting to me, because you had some rock bottom times in your life, and you were able to rise above them or build off of them in a way that's so positive and inspiring.
Thank you. And they all have to do with my kids. You want me to go talk a little about that, because I think that for me, it's been one of the things that that have changed me. My kids have always changed me. And
absolutely, I can vouch for that too with my 5. I'm just checking my timer here. So yes, go ahead.
Yeah. So I also have 5 kids, and I always say to people I have 5 kids because I do, but 4 of them are on this earth, and 1 of them is not. 1 of them passed away, and his name is Daniel, and he was total change for me. And talking about a rock bottom, yeah, there was a rock bottom in my life. And it's so just say a little bit about that. I had 3 kids, and they were all under the age of 8. And then I became pregnant with Daniel, and everything looked fine until a day before he was born. And like the day before he was due, and my nurse midwife said, he's not growing. Let's just go and check. And so we did a sonogram, and then it's like, let's induce him because he's really not growing. And the inducement didn't go well, so they did a C-section. And I still remember that they took him and they really rushed him off. And my husband was saying to me, I think he's not breathing well. And then he showed me a picture, and I'm a nurse, right? And he was totally on a ventilator, and they were doing all kind of stuff with him. And I'm like, this is not doing well. Mm-hmm. And immediately I was told, the doctor came right away while I was still in recovery and said, there's something really wrong. And we don't know if it's trisomy 18, which is 3 chromosomes 18, right? Mm-hmm. Or if it's trisomy all over the board. But both of them are not really compatible with long-term living. And that was crushing, of course. I mean, I remember just her saying that, and it was like, wow, the whole world, right? Because you expect this baby to be healthy. I had no indication, even though we had done a sonogram at 20 weeks. And it's amazing looking back that they didn't see anything there, because they should have, right? There's so much wrong with a baby, and most times in a trisomy baby, you actually lose them in the first 3 months. So yeah, he was there, and my whole world changed. I was like, what do I do now, right? And so he was put on a ventilator, on a sugar drip, a glucose drip, and he was there. And I remember, what do we even say to our kids, right? They were looking so much forward. And here you have a 2, a 4, and a 7-year-old. And what do you do? So my husband and I made a decision. We're just going to be around this together, right? And we're going to surround this together. So all the kids were able to go into the NICU, and they were a little bit rowdy, but we did anyway. But the fact was, after about 2.5, 3 days, he was getting all kind of arrhythmias. And we're like, we don't want him to die by himself. And we knew that his heart was so unstable that we couldn't have him. So we decided to extubate him, take him off the ventilator, take him off the breathing machine, and prepare to die. So we did that, and we expect him to die, and he didn't. He kept on breathing. Yeah, I was like, and my friend, and I still love her to pieces, she said to me, why don't you take him home? And I was like, I want to take him home. I just want to have home with this kid, without the wires, without everything else, right? Without everything around it. I just want to hold him and just be home with him. Mm-hmm. And that's the feeling I had from him, was like, I just want to be home. And first the doctor said no, because there was nothing set up. There was no hospice. There was nothing. And I'm like, I'm a nurse. I'll take him against medical advice. So I had a wonderful nurse, and she talked again. And it was just fear more than anything else, right? So we took him home. And he said, well, he can die on the way home. And like, I don't care. It's okay. If he dies on the way home, we'll do it. But he didn't. And he got home, and I was able to hold him all throughout the night. And the next day, the kids were able to play with him and just be around him. And then we went for a walk, which was amazing, right? After 3 days after C-section, to walk, we have a very hilly environment. And so I brought him home, and I was walking with him. And then at one point, my husband looked over, was talking to a friend, and my husband looked over, and then that's when he slipped. I always say he went from me to God's hands, and I didn't even know it at that point. And then my oldest son actually wanted to carry him home, which was really, really sweet. But that was definitely like a rock bottom time in my life, right? When talking about a rock bottom, where
sure.
Everything is just wiped away. And what do you do? How do you go on? You have to go on, because you have 3 other kids, but it's difficult. It's very difficult. So
they were all there with Daniel, and even held him after he had passed?
Yeah, they actually all did. Actually, what we did was kind of amazing. Looking back, it's like they all held him, and then the police officer came, of course, because they had to kind of investigate and do a short investigation, but they had already heard about it. And then we decided we wanted to celebrate his life. I didn't want to just not celebrate his life and who he is. Mm-hmm. And so they took him for a moment, did some treatments like they usually do, but then he came back at our house. And so we had an open house, because I hate funeral centers. I hate them with a passion. Mm-hmm. And so we had an open house, and for a whole day, people would just come in all the time, and he was there. He was kind of in a little bassinet, and it was so cute to see the little kids, because little kids have no concept, right? So they just went over and they touched him, and they were just, well, adults, I mean, that was a whole different story. People come with such stories around death, right, and what it means, that they all were like, wow, he's here. He's actually, right? It looked like he was just sleeping, but of course he was not. But that actually felt to me like I talked that day, and I talked the next day, and then the day after, and I kept on talking about his life and who he was. And I think looking at rock bottom, right, and getting out of that, there were so many women who either had a miscarriage or, right, a child that was born deaf or died very soon after. It's just such a story that lives as part of us, but we just don't always talk about it. So we talked and we talked and talked, and I think, yeah, that made a big difference in for me, is to get over that and just being able to express that, right, and again. So yeah.
So that's what you needed the most, was just for somebody to hear you talk about it and talk about him.
Yeah, I think that was really, really crucial. And
Yeah.
I think it was funny because my 2-year-old, she was so funny. So for her, it was really unreal, right? My 7-year-old was crushed. I mean, it was really, really hard for him. So much that when I got pregnant again, I did figure out if it was going to be a boy, because he only had sisters. He wanted a brother. He did get another boy. We had another brother, but the 2-year-old Elsa, she would just go up to everybody and say, "We just got a new baby," right? And I was like smiling, and then literally the next sentence would be, "And he died."
Yeah. So,
and people would look
matter
at
of
me.
fact, yeah.
Yes, it was for her. It was like really a matter of fact. I tell her that story now; she doesn't remember. But again, it allowed me to just express that a lot, and I think that's one thing. You're right, just telling my story again and again, and of course getting support from all kind of places, but telling my story again and again kind of really helped me express that, right? And I think when we tell our story, we integrate in our hearts and our minds, we integrate the trauma that comes from that. So yeah, I think that was a big deal, a really big deal for me. And so I think that helped a lot. And then just intuitively, I've always felt him very close. I've been able to communicate with him and to talk with him. And that has been another thing I think that really, truly helped me, feel better.
Can you tell me more about how you figured that out, that you were, and I've heard this from other mothers who have lost a child. How did you get to that place where you could communicate?
Honestly, it was actually between the funeral and when he was actually buried, between when he died and the funeral. Mm-hmm. I was going to meet to a sacred place that I love, and I was there, and I suddenly just had the feeling like, could I ask him? It was just a thought. Could I just ask him? Could I talk to him? And I just tried it. Honestly, I just tried it. I was like, hey, and I called him my name. I still remember. It's like, Daniel. And then I just heard this yes. And it was a different voice than me. It was a different voice. Saying, okay, can I talk to him, right? Really just, can I do that? And I did. And I was like, I just asked, like, Daniel, are you here? And I heard that, yes. And it was different. It wasn't my voice. It was a different voice. It was almost like a different feeling to that voice, right? It's such a perception. It's so new. People ask me, how do you know? And I just know. It's just no. I knew that wasn't my voice. I've talked to myself multiple times. But I talked to myself. It was a different voice, and I started to trust it. Mm-hmm. And as I started to trust it, I started feeling it more and more and more. And every birthday, every Mother's Day, it's just like he's here. It's like he comes like I always say like a grown son. It almost feels like to me. It's like beautiful grown son who just comes to visit and is grown up and and wonderful and just there to support and love me. And so I think, yeah, that's how I started, and that's how I've continued, is to just every now and tune into him. Sometimes I forget almost, and then there's other times where I really have that communication much stronger, that feeling that he's around. But I know he's around, and I know that has strengthened me tremendously, right? That these spirits who go, these babies who go, are really there, and they're not in a far place. They're really close to our family still, and that's one of my gifts. But that's why I think he's become such a blessing for me. It's like he really is part of our family here. And when I say, I did make him that promise when people asked me how many kids I would have, that I would always include him. I would always say 5, or that when it was beginning was 4, but I always said he is part of it. And then people always ask me about how old are they, and then it always comes up. And so I still talk about him a lot, and I think that's important to do as well, because I think it never goes away. Losing a child, never ever. Right? It never ever goes away. The pain around that, I still wonder. I mean, how old he would have been by now, and what would he have done? That it just never goes away. So I think the more I have included him in my life and in what I say and what I do, the better it is for me, actually. So.
And you actually call it a blessing for you.
Yeah, I think for me, I do believe in eternal life. I believe in there's a life after this, and I believe he's part of that. Like, he's part of that. And I don't know exactly how that's going to work and how that looks like, but for me, that's part of that. So his life, I think for a moment was in time given to me to make myself also much more aware. So with all of that came a deep awareness for me about what's important in life. I had a very high advancing career at Hopkins and was working. We still had time with the kids as well. But after that, I was like, forget it. And actually, I did go back because I know you don't need to make rapid changes. But I was like, I just want to be home. I want to be home with these other 3 kids. I want to travel with them. I want to enjoy them. I just want to be with them because life is so short, right? Life is so precious. Life is so short. So why would you spend it at all times on stuff that for me at that point didn't really matter? I did go back later on back into nursing, but I think at that point I was like, yeah, this high-end career is great, but I want to be home. I want to spend time with these kids. So that's what I did. So I think he really just showed me like what life is really all about, what's important in life, and what you really, and whatever that is for you, right? It doesn't matter what that is, but to go after what feels right. And for me at that point, it was right to leave my nursing career. Like I said, later on, I picked it up again and started my own kitchen coaching business. But for that moment in time, I had all these little babies, and it was time for me to spend time with them. So I think he's opened up an awareness for me, like there's more to life.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I find that a common thread with people who've hit a rock bottom, that that something just opened for them with this. They didn't see it at the time, but it just like opened a whole new door for you, a whole new way to interpret what you gave as a nurse in hospital versus what you do as a nurse now. You're the same person, but you've just got this whole new universe now available to you.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's what it did for me. And even coming back later as a nurse and now doing my own practice, it still is different because I still interact differently. And some of the things that were really important, aren't as important anymore. And things that...
Can you give me some examples of what's different now when you're...
I think I always, in terms of my career, I always cared a lot about what other people were thinking.
Okay.
And what other people were up to, and I cared about the titles, and I cared about, getting the master's at Hopkins. It wasn't for nothing. I mean, it was a beautiful education. I did phenomenal things there. But it doesn't matter that anymore. I think nowadays what I say, in my own practice, in my own business, I think I've changed more lives in the last 4 or 5 years doing that than what I ever did at Hopkins. So I think for me, it just, that shifted from wanting all the accolades, all the, and again, if you want to go for that, there's nothing wrong for that. But for me, it was like, those accolades didn't mean as much. The outside world and the things didn't really mean that much anymore. It's funny because people, I have my master's behind me here, right? And sometimes people say to me, doing what you do now, don't you miss that time? Wouldn't you rather just work at Hopkins and have and I'm like, no, really not. Because when I see people's lives shift one-on-one, it's so much more valuable to me. And I think that's something that Daniel taught me is that being in a moment, being in the presence, right? Even I think still having 4 days with him, but after having 4 days with him was precious to me. And it's funny because a friend of mine made a video, and I only watched that video once because he had a strong spirit, and he still has a very strong spirit, right? But you couldn't see it on the video. And the video was just this very helpless baby that was and everything else. But his spirit has always been strong, and he just reminds me, and still to this day reminds me, that what really matters is what's in our heart, what we need to connect with, and all the other stuff is fluff, and it doesn't really matter that much. So I think I'm glad I had my time at Hopkins. I'm glad I did that whole career stuff, but I'm also really glad that turnaround came and gave me more time to be with my other kids and to value and to be present to their lives as well, right? And it's short. It's short. They're almost all now out the door. I only have a 15-year-old left.
Oh, wow. So Daniel would be how old now?
He would be almost 18, 17 actually. So 18.
Yeah.
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 It's a long time.
It's a very sad story in some ways, but very beautiful in how you were able to just reframe it, and things happen in life that are, to me, unexplainable. I don't know that I say for a reason, but life happens, and it's often what we do at Rock Bottom with that, and what we're open to.
Yeah.
You know, it sounds like this really opened you up to possibility. And I'm also noticing this common theme of what a strong desire we have to live and live fully, to our capacity. And even in Daniel's example, where everyone thought he wasn't going to last long after he came off the life supports, and he lasted 4 days, which is amazing.
Yeah, actually, it was about a day, actually. But yeah, you're right. What was amazing is his desire. When my friend said, "Don't want you to take him home,"
Yeah.
it wasn't just my desire. I felt it was both of us' desires. Like,
Yeah.
you get out of the hospital too, and to experience. That's why we went on a walk, right? We had a friend come over just the morning and made some beautiful pictures. And I don't know, that was such a gift for me. He just came over and said, "Can I make some pictures?" And we only had pictures from him in all the hospital stuff. And then we have one picture where I'm holding a baby, and all the kids are, and my husband's around me, and it's like this beautiful. It's still one of my favorite pictures. But it was such a gift to have that, right? But for him to just, you're right, to be home, to be in a home environment, right? Yeah. To have siblings, not all the other stuff around it. I don't know how much he sensed of that, but there's a piece of me that says, yeah, he wanted that too. You're right.
I think with death, people often deny their feelings, or they don't talk about it. It's so scary, but it doesn't. I don't think we process it if we don't go up close and look and connect and be in that moment. So your story is just so powerful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a beautiful story. So thank you. I think it's his story, and that's what he told me. Tell my story, and sometimes I feel like I haven't done it enough. So, but there's still time. So I think I tell the story more. So right, because there's a way to celebrate the death of a child. I mean, and celebrate the child, not so much a death, but celebrate any time you have with a person, right? Especially with a child in this life. I think it's precious.
And with ourselves, that that whole concept is applicable to our family, but also with ourselves, and being, when you're in that rat race and whatever your career is, and you're going for the job, the degree, the titles, and like you, I don't mean to present that as a shallow thing. It's not at all. But sometimes, especially with multiple children, and I was single parent with 5 kids, you're just one foot in front of the other. You're not even aware of your life and your world. Mm-hmm. And I think you took this as a signal to slow down, stop, and reprioritize things. And once you did, you had the tools, you had what you needed to handle this, and to memorialize it in a very beautiful and healthy way. And even bringing your kids in, and all the other children in their various developmental stages, I think it's just part of life. I mean, what did we do before we had funeral homes? And somebody decided they could make money off of this.
Yes. No, that's very true. And my kids have reacted very differently, but it's always been a celebration. And it's funny, even they've written very touching stories as they've written things like for high school and for college, even applications, and it's been a part of their lives. And
wow.
Right. So it's been a beautiful part of their lives. And so that's what I wanted. It's always like he needs to be part of this family, and he is. And so
in a very beautiful, positive way. I'm tempted to ask more, but I want to leave it here as Daniel's story, and we're gonna go on and talk more about the 3 brains and the Totally Well interview. But this has been such a beautiful story. I know many women who have lost a child, and they'll appreciate hearing how you handled it, or in the future, because it happens more often in miscarriage, losing earlier than that. And people don't talk about it, and they don't know, that there are people who will listen. And even if you're at the other end of it, what you can do to help is just sit there with the person and listen.
Yes, and that's my invitation too. If anybody wants to talk, I'm here to talk. You can just reach out to me because I'd love to. I love to support this because I think we have such a shared experience as women, right?
Yeah.
Even and especially if you have lost a child or a miscarriage, we have a shared experience, and we need to talk about it because I think it will change so much in ourselves and our environment if we just talk about it more, right? It's part of who we are. So yeah.
Very nice. Anniemarie, thank you so much. And I hope people will reach out to you at Annemarie Annemarie
Awesome.
.com. And I appreciate your time today on Rock Bottom.
Thank you very much.